Now, for reasons I'll come on to, I was very tempted to film this video while driving, to be all meta, as the kids say, but then I thought better of it when I nearly swerved off the road down there trying to avoid a little baby squirrel. It's not that big, just stuck in the middle of the lane. But what I want to talk about is, there was an incident recently. There's a guy called Jack Doherty, or Doherty, who's one of these online prankster-type annoying idiots. And he was driving along in his McLaren F1 while also checking his live stream, all being filmed, because that's what he does. He just like live streams, getting into bother. And while he was gunning it down a very drizzly, torrential highway and checking his messages on his live stream, perhaps unsurprisingly, he totaled his car. And a couple of issues have arisen. Basically, you got to hand it to the guy. He kept filming. He's got his poor cameraman in the car who took the brunt of the accident. And he's sort of staging as he's climbing out of the car, and he actually hands his phone to one of the rescuers, the paramedics, and says, "Can you film this? Can you film this?" as I'm getting out. But people have said, well, first of all, is he in any trouble? Short answer, probably yes. But also, can his cameraman sue him? Because effectively, he just left him in the car. Until he got everything set up and, filmed properly. And then eventually, after he'd got some nice footage, he says he gets his friend out of the car, being all, "Get him out of the car, get him out of the car." And as soon as he does, he goes, "Here, hold these two phones so we can get different angles on this." But first of all, what about him? Well, obviously, this all took place in Florida. And I checked with one of my Florida lawyer friends here. So I'm going to talk about some general principles and then how this will specifically apply in Florida. First of all, what he is doing himself clearly amounts to sort of careless driving, all sorts of traffic offences. So what will be interesting there is whether his insurance company will pay out. Now, interestingly, he's already in a row with an insurance company because he's also being sued for assaulting somebody. And he's, because he does all these provocation videos where he starts fights with people, then gets his big bodyguard to step in. But his bodyguard lamped somebody. And now they're suing both the bodyguard, but also him, effectively, as, vicarious liability for his employee. And he tried to claim the legal expenses on his household insurance. And they said, well, no, this has got nothing to do with, we do cover legal expenses, but not when you go outside and cause all sorts of bother. But in this particular case, it's very difficult to see that the insurance company is going to pay up for, certainly not for the damage to the car, because they'll say, well, you caused that yourself. Insurers, though, they do have to actually cover people injured by your unlawful, reckless behaviour. That's the whole point. If you are drink driving and you run somebody over, your insurance company still covers that. But what will they do about this camera guy? Let's say he sues Jack Doherty. And effectively, it'll be the insurance company or him personally. What defences will they raise? Well, in law, we have a set of defences to negligence claims, because that's what it would be. It'd be a straightforward negligence claim. You owed me a duty of care. You breached that duty of care. As a result, I suffered injuries. The duty of care is I'm a passenger in your car. So that's a very standard situation. You do owe a duty of care to passengers in your car. The breach of the duty, well, you deliberately chose to drive dangerously. And the injuries, they were caused when he crashed the car. So that bit would be straightforward. However, there are three things I want to talk about. There's ex turpi causa, contributory negligence, which I almost pronounced correctly, and valenti. What's valenti? Valenti non fit injuria, as we say in Latin. So what are those? Well, ex turpi causa is the idea that you cannot profit from your own wrongdoing. So say, for instance, somebody breaks into your house and while they are trying to steal your sort of valuable painting, they get it off the wall and it just falls on them and injures them. Well, so long as, the picture wasn't hung negligently or you'd left a booby trap, the courts would be very unsympathetic there. They say the only reason you got injured is because you were doing something unlawful. However, it's not a blanket sort of get out of jail free card, because generally in most jurisdictions you still owe some duty of care even to trespassers. So say, for instance, somebody's breaking into your property and you'd left a well cover, open or something like that, with no warning signs, and it wasn't fenced off and somebody fell down it. There could be an argument that even though the person was a trespasser, you're still liable. Especially when it's like, kids and things. I mean, there's quite a few cases on the railway cases where people have, cut through and got onto railways and been injured. And the calls have quite often been sympathetic, although there was one where a couple of kids got really badly injured. I mean, really life-changing injuries when they were trying to train surf. And there the court said, well, no, I mean, that is entirely your own fault. And the argument was, well, the rail network had not maintained the fences properly. There was a little bit where people could sneak in and out. But they said, well, no, come on, sometimes you've just got to sort of live with the consequences of your actions. So that's something that they might look at, that he was, involved in the wrongdoing, because he was effectively an accessory to the offence. He was filming it. So is he assisting the offence? Is he encouraging the offence? Is he inciting the offence? Well, the argument would be that they were in it together. Okay, Jack Doherty was doing all the actual jabbering and talking, but he was a part of that because he was filming it and putting it out to the live stream. But even if you've not really done any wrongdoing, there's the idea of volenti non fit injuria. You can't sue for something where you voluntarily assumed the risk. It is the risk, though. I mean, you can't consent or volunteer to serious injury. You can consent to the risk of serious injury, so like in a boxing match or a rugby match, but the idea is there that serious injury isn't actually a part of it. It's just sometimes it's a consequence. You can, however, consent to just a general assault, because obviously in boxing, you're punching each other in the face. That amounts to an assault and amounts to ABH, actual bodily harm. But you can consent to that. But the idea is you can't consent to anything beyond that. So we can't have dueling or, sort of the Hunger Games or anything like that. But in this particular case, he has voluntarily got into that car knowing that his friend stroke employer is a bit of an idiot. But again, that's not always the case. Under English law, for instance, people who voluntarily get into cars with drunk drivers still have protection. They can still sue and claim from the insurers if they are injured. Compare and contrast, though, to voluntarily getting into an aeroplane with a drunk pilot, where they said, well, no, because that is a great one. Those two guys completely hammered and decided it'd be a good idea to take their plane up with inevitable consequences. And they said, come on, you got in there knowing your mate was hammered. And it's not a defence to say, I was too hammered to realise my mate was hammered. So in that case, they didn't pay out. But in this particular case, they might say, well, he volunteered to go around and be part of this. He didn't say, hey, stop looking at your phone. Maybe look at the road, look where you're going. He was, he knew what was going on. He didn't try to stop it. And in fact, by continuing to filming, it's not like he was a passive passenger, just sat there going, oh, I don't know what to say. He was taking an active part in it. What about contributory negligence? Because this is the one that will be very relevant in Florida. Now, contributory negligence is where, yes, somebody injures you or causes you a loss, but you did something yourself that exacerbated that loss and contributed to it. Now, it used to be a complete defence, contributory negligence. Now, however, in the UK, and I do say UK because it's the same both sides of the border, it's done on a percentage scale. So it's, yes, I ran you over on your bike, but you weren't wearing your cycle helmet, so I'm not responsible for your head injuries, and that was like 20% worth of your damages, so let's knock 20% off. Things like that. Sometimes you will actually get expert evidence that will identify exactly the damage caused by the contributory negligence. Had this person been wearing a seatbelt, these are the injuries. However, because they weren't wearing a seatbelt, these are the injuries. So you only claim the damages. You can only get the damages for what you would have got the injuries had you been wearing your seatbelt. Sometimes it's a bit arbitrary though, and they'll just pluck a figure out of the air. Well, we can't be sure whether the injuries were made worse because of your contributory negligence, but we'll just put a percentage. We'll knock it back 15%, 30%, whatever. And you can actually have 100% contributory negligence. It's like, yes, the other guy, the defendant was at fault. However, everything, the consequences are all down to your fault. So yes, he was at fault, but had you not have been negligent yourself, you would have suffered no injury. Now, what's interesting in Florida, and thank you to my wonderful lawyer friend, Mr. Rabin, who told me this, if it's more than 50% contributory negligence, then it's zero. You get zero. So if you are more than half to blame, then effectively the burden is shifted, and it's, well, no, it's all on you. So it'll be a very interesting sort of calculation. Also, they have a thing where if you are engaged in criminal behaviour and injured as a result, then that automatically counts as more than 50% contributory negligence. So what I quite like there is they've sort of wrapped up valenti, extirpi causa and contributory negligence all into one sort of general test, which is quite useful because sometimes you're arguing going, well, it's contrib neg, no it's not, it's valenti, no it's not, it's extirpi causa. They're basically saying, if you have done something to effectively bring this on yourself, then we will just start doing the percentage game. And if it turns out you're more than 50% to blame, then you get note. So there you go. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. There's all sorts of other things, because I don't know what their relationship is, but if he's paying him and it's an employee relationship, there's all this stuff like, you have failed to provide a safe system of work. All the health and safety type claims there. So, I mean, the injuries didn't actually seem, he got a few cuts and bruises and things, but how litigious they are in the US. But very interesting, because of course this would go before a jury, and you never know what juries do. Although having said that, apparently it could be struck out. They have all their tort reform stuff there, where they can say, this is a frivolous, vexatious claim that you're not going to get home on. So that's it. So we're not going to give you anything. But there you go. Like I said, I'm not sure how big fans you are of sort of, these sorts of TikTokers. Or I think it's on something called Kick, who apparently have now banned him, whether that's a permanent or temporary ban. Because I do like the fact that when he was filming, the paramedics were going, shouldn't we be like trying to treat your friend and sort this out? He's going, look, man, I've just written off a £200,000 car. I need to make the money back. This is my income. So at least he was blatantly honest about it. But, top legal tip, if you are going to involve yourself in either a crime or something that will negate your insurance, maybe don't live stream it. Who knows? But there you go. Anyway, where am I today? I'm at a place called Idlis Vale, which is really pretty. So I'm just going to stick the camera out the window. I tried to sort of frame it so you could see out the window, but I didn't quite manage that. But it's just that over there, that's all those woods that I like to film in. And you can almost see the hillfort. Well, you can see where the hillfort used to be. So there you go. And I like this lane because there's hardly any traffic on it. Although when there is traffic, it's a blooming nightmare because it's about 6 feet wide, if that. And there are virtually zero passing places. And my record here is reversing 3/4 of a mile. In other fact, because the guy had a tractor with a trailer on, so it was definitely down to me, that one.